It was a quiet night in California. The kind of night where the only sound is the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of an old wall clock. I had just finished folding the last stack of towels, neatly placing them into a suitcase I had been packing for weeks. Each towel, each bottle of sunscreen, each small souvenir I had bought for the grandchildren carried love stitched into it. I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had already gone cold, my heart filled with anticipation. Tomorrow, I thought, would be the start of something beautiful. A family trip that I had saved and sacrificed for. 3 long years of saying no to myself so I could say yes to them. And then, my phone buzzed. Just one vibration. One message. I smiled before opening it, expecting to see a, "Thanks, Mom," or maybe a question about the flight. But instead, my entire world collapsed into a few cruel words glowing on the screen. "Mom, you won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep the vacation just for her family. You've already done your part by paying." At first, I thought it was a mistake. I blinked, whispered the words out loud as if maybe I had misunderstood them. But the truth stared back at me, cold and unshakable. The air felt heavier, my chest tighter. I held the phone like it was a blade, its sharpness cutting deeper with every second. My hands began to tremble, not from age, but from heartbreak. My mind raced back to the little boy I once carried in my arms, who used to press his tiny hand against my cheek and say, "Don't cry, Mommy. I'll always be here." That boy had grown into a man, and with one text, he had abandoned me. The clock ticked louder, the house felt emptier, and the silence around me became unbearable. All those years of sacrifice, of love, of giving everything I had, reduced to nothing more than a transaction. Not a mother, not family, just the woman who paid. That night, at 11:02 p.m., my heart shattered in a way it had never before. And I realized, sometimes the deepest wounds aren't made by strangers. They're carved by the very people we gave our lives for. The morning after that message, I sat at my kitchen table with the phone still in my hand, staring at it like it might suddenly change its words. My son's text burned into my mind, and I whispered it again under my breath, as if saying it out loud might soften the blow. But the truth doesn't soften, it hardens. I thought of the boy I once held against my chest when he was sick, rocking him through the night until dawn. The boy who once painted a crooked heart on paper and wrote inside, "Mommy is my hero." That boy had vanished. In his place stood a man who no longer saw me as part of his world. It wasn't just the vacation. It was something deeper, something crueler. I had been quietly written out of the story I helped create. I was not in their dinners, not in their plans, not even in their conversations. My place had been erased long before the message arrived. This was only the confirmation. The pain of exclusion is unlike any other. When strangers dismiss you, it stings but fades. When your own blood chooses to close the door, it feels like being buried alive. You still breathe, you still exist, but to them, you're gone. I looked at the empty chair across from me, the one I always kept for family dinners that never happened anymore. Dust had gathered on its surface, just like it had gathered on my hope. That chair was a symbol now, not of who was missing, but of how I had been replaced. I was not a mother in their eyes anymore, not family, not loved. I was erased. And that realization cut deeper than the message ever could. For 3 long years, I lived with one quiet dream. It wasn't grand, it wasn't selfish, it was simple. A single family trip where, for just a week, we could all be together. My son, his wife, my grandchildren, all of us sitting under the same sky, laughing the way we used to, remembering the man we lost, my James. Every dollar I saved was tied to that dream. I stopped buying little comforts. No more fresh flowers for my kitchen table. No new shoes when mine wore thin. I walked past bakeries with their warm loaves of bread, past coffee shops with the rich scent of roasted beans, and I kept walking, because every penny mattered. I took on extra tutoring sessions with restless children who struggled with math, staying up late into the night, my eyes heavy but my resolve unshaken. I told myself, this is for them. For my family, for the memory of James. In my mind, I could already see it, a Hawaiian beach at sunset, the grandchildren playing in the waves. My son smiling the way he used to before life made him so distant. I pictured us lighting candles by the ocean, whispering James's name into the wind, letting the waves carry his memory into eternity. That thought kept me alive through the coldest, loneliest nights. Every sacrifice, every skipped meal, every lonely evening. It all had meaning, because it was building toward that one dream. But when my son's text came, the truth hit me like a tidal wave. The dream was never mine to share. I had been building a future I wasn't even meant to be part of. I had spent years paying for a memory that would not include me. And that realization was the cruelest cut of all. There is a heaviness that comes with being forgotten. Not suddenly, but slowly, piece by piece, like a photograph fading under the sun. That's how it felt. At first, it was little things. Missed phone calls that I told myself were accidents. Messages left unanswered that I convinced myself they simply hadn't seen. Then it became the holidays. Thanksgiving dinner without my chair at the table. Christmas mornings where the only sound in my house was the hum of the heater, not the laughter of children tearing open gifts. I told myself it was fine, that they were busy, that life had changed. But deep down, I knew, it wasn't business, it was choice. My son and his wife had built a circle, and I was no longer inside it. They smiled for photos, posted them online, captions filled with family time and blessed moments. And there I was, scrolling through, realizing I wasn't family anymore. Not in their eyes. Not in their hearts. It's a special kind of pain, being alive and yet invisible to the people you love most. I wasn't a mother to them anymore. I was an obligation, a line item, the one who paid. A burden, at least, is acknowledged. But I wasn't even that. I was unnecessary, expendable, forgotten. And every time I looked at the empty chair in my dining room, the silence screamed louder than words ever could. That was the weight I carried, not just the exclusion from a vacation, but the erasure of my place in the very family I had built, with my own 2 hands that night. I sat at my small wooden desk, the same desk where I used to help my son with his homework. His little hand would grip his pencil tightly. His brows furrowed as he asked me how to spell tomorrow. Back then, I believed our tomorrows would always include each other. Now, decades later, I sat at the same desk with a laptop glowing coldly before me. My glasses slid down the bridge of my nose as I opened my bank account. The numbers stared back at me. The 21,7 and 63,84. That figure wasn't just money, it was my skipped coffees, my worn-out shoes. My sleepless tutoring sessions. It was 3 years of sacrifice, 3 years of hope, 3 years of believing in a dream that wasn't even mine anymore. My cursor hovered over one small button. Freeze account. I stared at it, my finger trembling. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it echo in my ears. Was I really about to do this? Was I really about to stop being the quiet provider? The woman who kept giving even when no one gave back? A voice inside me whispered all the doubts. What if this makes him hate you? What if you become the villain? What if this closes the door forever? But then another voice rose, firmer, stronger. The voice I hadn't heard in years. And what if you don't? What if you let them continue to use you, to erase you, to silence you until there's nothing left of you but ashes? I thought of James. He had always told me, "You're stronger than you think." His voice came back to me in that moment, soft but steady, as though he was sitting right beside me. With tears streaming down my face, I whispered to myself, "No more." And I clicked. One simple click, one frozen account, and in that single moment, after years of being dismissed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. It didn't erase the pain, but it reminded me that I still mattered, that my choices still had weight, that I wasn't invisible. For the first time, my silence wasn't weakness. It was defiance. That night, I didn't sleep, but I didn't cry either. I just sat there breathing, letting the weight of years finally begin to lift. Because with one click, I had chosen myself. At the airport, they must have been brimming with excitement. I could picture it, as if I were there, my son pushing the luggage cart, his wife adjusting her sunglasses, the children buzzing with energy as they tugged on their backpacks. I imagined the selfies they took, wide smiles under the departure board, hashtags already typed out, Pain Family Trip Fee Blessed Fi Hawaii Bound, photos where I did not exist, though I had paid for every smile in that frame. And then, the moment came. They handed over the credit card linked to my frozen account. Beep, declined. The airline worker tried again, maybe offering a polite smile. Beep, declined. Confusion must have flickered across their faces. My son, probably embarrassed, stepped forward, trying to hide the rising panic. His wife's smile likely cracked into sharpness, her voice strained with frustration. The children fidgeted, not yet understanding. Beep, declined again. And that was when the illusion shattered. In my living room, hundreds of miles away, my phone lit up with their calls. First his number. Then hers. Then his again. Call after call. My screen flashed with their names, their desperation. I sat in my chair, staring at the phone, hearing the faint echo of the vibration against the table. But I did not answer. For years, I had answered every call. When they needed money. When they needed a babysitter. When they needed anything. But when I needed love, when I needed them, my phone stayed silent. Now, it was my turn. The silence that stretched between their frantic attempts, and my stillness wasn't just silence. It was my voice. It was my way of saying, I am not invisible. I am not just your wallet. I am your mother, and you cannot erase me. Somewhere in that airport, surrounded by strangers, their perfect trip collapsed before it even began. The flights they thought were theirs to take would never leave the ground. And though I wasn't there to see it, I could feel the shift deep inside me. For the first time in years, the power had returned to my hands. This was the flight they thought would carry them to paradise. But without me, without respect, it became the flight that would never take off. The flight without landing. A week later, the first email arrived. Your refund has been processed. It was from the airline. Cold, polite, transactional. I stared at the words on the screen. And for a long moment, I couldn't breathe. That line of text was more than a simple confirmation. It was proof. Proof that the vacation I had sacrificed for, the dream I had carried in silence, was over. Proof that the life I thought I still belonged to had ended the moment they excluded me. Each day after, another email would come. The hotel, the tour company, the car rental. One by one, the pieces of a dream returned to my account. Dollars and cents dripping back into my life like ashes falling from a fire long burned out. Every refund was both a wound and a balm. On one hand, I felt the sting of betrayal again and again. This money wasn't just money. It was my love, my devotion, my years of sacrifice, reduced to transactions in an inbox. On the other hand, each email whispered something I had forgotten. It's yours. It was always yours. I realized then how blind I had been. I had spent years giving away pieces of myself, thinking it was love, thinking it was what a mother was supposed to do. But love isn't measured by emptying yourself to nothing. Love isn't meant to be exploited, stretched, and discarded when inconvenient. The money trickled back. But my heart did not heal with it. Because what I truly wanted, the laughter of my grandchildren, the warmth of my son's smile, the feeling of family, couldn't be refunded. Those things were gone, and no bank account could bring them back. Late one night, I sat staring at the glow of my screen as the last refund cleared. I closed my laptop with shaking hands and pressed my palms together, whispering into the silence, Jamie's, I tried. I really tried. And in that moment, I understood the truth. Betrayal doesn't always arrive as a dramatic storm. Sometimes it comes quietly. As a line in an email, a refund you never wanted, and a reminder that the people you love can break you without ever raising their voices. The betrayal wasn't that they excluded me from a vacation. The betrayal was that they excluded me from their lives. Sometimes, late at night, I look down at my hands resting in my lap. They are not the hands I once knew. Once, they were smooth and strong, able to carry babies, scrub floors, and knead bread without tiring. Once, they braided my little boy's hair, buttoned his school shirts, tied his shoes, and held his trembling fingers through storms and nightmares. Now, these hands are wrinkled, their veins rising like rivers beneath fragile skin. They shake sometimes when I hold a cup of tea. The nails are brittle, the knuckles swollen from years of labor. To some, they may look like nothing more than the hands of an old woman, forgotten, irrelevant, fading. But I know better. Every wrinkle tells a story. Every scar is a testimony. These hands carried generations forward. They stitched torn clothes when money was short. They cooked meals out of almost nothing. They wiped away tears, my son's tears, my own tears, and kept going, no matter how heavy the world became. And though my family may have turned away from me, though my son may have chosen convenience over loyalty, these hands remind me of a truth he cannot erase. I gave. I loved. I built. I touch the creases and I see my husband's face in memory, the way he used to take my hands in his, kiss them gently, and say, "These are the strongest hands I've ever known." I carry that with me still, even in the silence of this house. Yes, my son's betrayal has cut me deeply. Yes, the loneliness lingers like a shadow in every corner of my home. But when I look at these hands, I do not see weakness. I see a legacy of resilience, of sacrifice, of love given freely, even when it was not returned. And I know, when my time comes, the world will not remember the vacations I never took or the phone calls that never came. But maybe, just maybe, when my grandchildren are old enough to understand, they'll remember the woman, with wrinkled hands, who once carried their world, with nothing but love. Because these hands may tremble now, but they have never let go of strength. The nights are the hardest. When the world falls silent, when the hum of the day is gone, I am left alone with my thoughts. The clock ticks too loudly in the stillness, and the shadows stretch across my walls like reminders of all the years that have slipped through my fingers. Sometimes, I sit in my chair by the window and watch the streetlights flicker against the pavement. Families pass by, young couples walking hand in hand, children racing ahead on bicycles, neighbors carrying bags of groceries. Their laughter drifts through the air, faint but sharp enough to pierce the quiet of my home, and I wonder, when did I stop being part of that kind of life? I think of my son often in these hours. Not the man he is now, but the boy he once was. The boy who used to run into my arms at the school gates, who would slip handwritten notes under my door that said, "I love you, Mom." I hold those memories tightly, because they are all I have left of the version of him that still saw me, still needed me, still loved me without conditions. I whisper into the night sometimes, speaking as though he can hear me. "Do you remember, my son? Do you remember the nights I stayed awake when you were sick? The mornings I worked 2 jobs, just so you could have new shoes, the way I clapped for you louder than anyone else when you graduated?" The silence answers me, and yet, in that silence, I also find pieces of myself. Painful pieces, yes, but also strength I didn't know was still there. These nights of reflection are not only about sorrow, they are about remembering the woman I was before life bent me down. They are about rediscovering the truth. I am not just a mother abandoned, I am a woman who has endured. The tears still come, of course. Some nights I cry until sleep takes me, other nights I just sit, watching the stars, imagining James among them, his gentle voice reminding me, "You gave your all. You loved without measure. That will always matter." And slowly, I begin to believe him. Because even in the loneliest hours, even when I feel erased from the world I built, there is one thing that cannot be stolen from me: the love I carried, the sacrifices I made, the life I gave. The nights may be long, but they are also where I find my truest self, scarred, yes, but still unbroken. I often catch myself staring at my hands. They sit quietly in my lap, lined with time, each crease a reminder of a story lived. At first glance, they look fragile, thin skin stretched over bones, veins raised like rivers, joints swollen from years of use. To strangers, they are simply the hands of an old woman. But to me, they are my history, my proof of existence. These hands once cradled a newborn, my son, red-faced and wailing, the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. They held him through nights of fever, through scraped knees, through tears over broken toys. They worked endlessly, scrubbing, cooking, washing, so that he could grow up with comfort I never had. These hands signed checks for his college tuition, mended his clothes, packed lunches, and clapped the loudest at every achievement. And now, these same hands sit empty. No small fingers to hold, no phone calls to answer, no warm hugs to receive. My son has long since stopped reaching for them. Still, when I run my fingers over the ridges of my knuckles, I don't just feel loss. I feel survival. These hands carried me through abandonment, through silence, through betrayal. They may tremble when I lift a cup of tea, but they are stronger than anyone will ever know. Sometimes I imagine my grandchildren, years from now, remembering me. Will they remember my wrinkled hands, passing them cookies across the table? Will they remember how these same hands brushed their hair back as they fell asleep? Perhaps one day, when they are older, they will look at their own hands and wonder about mine. And maybe then, they will understand. These hands are not just relics of age. They are evidence of a life spent giving, even when it went unnoticed. They are symbols of love that stretched beyond measure, even when unreturned. They are proof that a woman can be broken again and again, and yet still rise, still endure, still create a legacy out of scars. So yes, my hands are wrinkled now. But when I look at them, I see something my son cannot erase. I see a mother who loved without limits. I see a woman who survived what was meant to silence her. I see a legacy that will outlive the pain. These wrinkled hands are my crown.